Welcome to StudyIQ. My name is Bhuvan. Today is the 2nd of August and this is the editorial edge. Okay. So we begin again with another set of articles, another set of topics that you ought to know, that you ought to focus on. And so the first topic that I have for you today is to do with sustainable development goals and climate change. So this intersectionality, when we talk about UPSC preparation, a large part of that is to do with forming interlinkages. And so today we will try and form an interlinkage between sustainable development goals and climate change. Okay. We'll also seek to answer a mains related question from this particular topic. We will seek to understand which of the sustainable development goals could be considered contradictory to each other. Which are only the bookish ones, which have the practical implications. So we'll take a look at that. Okay, a very important, a very pertinent topic for the mains, at least the forthcoming mains, considering that you have the Sustainable Development Goals Summit that is going to happen in September, October. Okay, so we'll take a look at that first, the first order of the day. Thereafter, we'll take a look at cherries, because again, cherries has been in the news recently. A lot of articles has been published regarding cherries. Okay, cherry cultivation, what are the problems of cherry farming, what kind of procedures are used to grow cherries in India. Okay, we'll take a look at that. What is the exact climatic conditions that you need, say, for cherry plantations? We'll take a look at that. Okay, so cherries will be our order of point number 2. And number 3 is we'll seek to understand and just take a very brief look at Voyager, the Voyager mission of United States. So there was some news received that, well, it is unable to transmit information. Okay, there is something wrong, some technical problem that it is facing. So I think it's a very pertinent time to straight away look at the Voyager mission and then take a look at, say, what kind of, what were the mission specifics? What was the overall target of the mission? So that is first we are going to do. Okay. Deepak, Arka, Jyoti, Asha, thank you for joining, guys. Good morning. Good morning. Thanks for joining. All right. So first we'll begin with the questions of yesterday, because that's what we always do, look at the questions. So this I discussed, this was in fact discussed in the class, that wherever you have a sort of overpopulation of satellites in the orbit, which basically then denies you the opportunity to launch further satellites in that orbit. So that is called as the Kessler syndrome. We had discussed this. Happy morning to you, Sai Krishna. Thanks for joining. All right. So Kessler syndrome is the obvious answer here. We'll take a look at B. Project Netra is India's early warning system to detect space debris. Absolutely correct. Okay. In fact, Netra is the common name given to all these early warning systems that India has, including the aircraft, the AVAX. Okay. Sutsutong, good morning. Rajan, good morning. Suchana, good morning. Okay. And then we have this, India is a party to the Outer Space Treaty. In fact, all spacefaring nations, okay, all the major spacefaring nations at least, they all are a part of the Outer Space Treaty. The Outer Space Treaty is considered to be the all-encompassing document regarding space law. The Magna Carta of space law also it is referred to. Okay, so correct. India is a party to the Space Liability Convention, obviously, which is why Australia is now staking its claim, saying that, well, this previous defunct part of your PSLV IRNSS mission has come aboard, has come to our shores, caused marine pollution, and then the charges that they will level. So obviously they are doing so because India is a party to this. And India is a party to the Moon Treaty. Well, there is the difference. India has signed it, okay, but it has not ratified it. And so the statement that if you are a party, it means you have completed both these processes. Okay, India has just completed this process, not this process, which means India is not a party to the Moon Treaty. All right. So your statement 4 is incorrect, which means 1, 2, and 3 are correct here. Let's go forward. Now the first question: meteorites are categorized as space debris. So first, straight away understand class 6 level NCERT. Okay. You must have read in your class 6 level NCERT that when you have a meteor coming, okay, it enters the Earth's atmosphere. Now if it hits the ground, it becomes a meteorite, right? As long as it is in the space, it is called as a meteoroid. All right, know the differences first, which is why this is called as a meteor shower. So the ones that make it to the ground are called meteorites. Now the question asks me, meteorites are categorized as space debris. So essentially the NASA website now, okay, I'm just going to go ahead and straight away give you my source. The NASA website says that meteorites, meteoroids in fact, okay, are categorized as space debris, right, along with say the orbital debris which is caused by us humans. You know, you have say rocket proponents components that are left, or say you have these anti-satellite tests that say the Chinese carried out, you know, to destroy their own satellite. Obviously it broke into several different fragments, so again causing pollution there, you know. So this is essentially the question about. So the meteoroids are categorized as space debris, and obviously you have the orbital debris which we create in the orbit, which is why it is called as orbital debris. So this question by this standard is wrong, okay. Meteorites are not space debris, meteoroids are space debris. And although they are say probably converging up until a certain point, we will just stick to the technical definitions, okay. Good morning Bulbul, Mohammad Salih Anwar, good morning, good morning. Thank you for joining guys. Okay, next, only a state shall bring forward a claim against a state is true. We discussed this yesterday, that if you get hit by a meteoroid, or sorry, an orbital space debris, you can't go ahead and sue say NASA or ESA. Indian government will have to do it on your behalf, okay. EPR is the framework, absolutely correct. So the incorrect option here being only 1. Alright, let's go next. L4 and L5 are the only stable Lagrange points. We discussed L1 to L5 in detail yesterday guys, okay. Go ahead and look at the lecture again. If you face any difficulties, reach out to me. Any doubts, reach out to me, okay. It's very important that you know this. So this is correct. Deep space observatory telescopes use L2 point, which is the shadow area behind the earth, you know. If this is the earth and this is the sun, this is where L2 is, so that you can go ahead and look deep into space, okay. The SOHO is in the L1 point, correct, which is where again India's Aditya mission is also headed. Why again L1? Because it offers you uninterrupted view of the sun, okay. You are able to harness solar energy better, stay there for longer times. So again, India's mission going to join SOHO there in L1 point. And SOHO was joined by NASA and Roscosmos. In fact, no, not Roscosmos. It was the European Space Agency, okay. Roscosmos is the Russian agency. So the Russians and the Americans collaborated on the ISS, the International Space Station, along with host of other spacefaring agencies. But in terms of SOHO, it was the Europeans and the Americans, okay. So the incorrect option here being only 4. All right, let's look at the next one. So we discussed the primary launch vehicles, you know, which are the primary launch vehicles of space agencies. Like say India has PSLV, you know, what are the others? What are the other launch vehicles of other agencies? So the Ariane 5 is of the European Space Agency. In fact, they are going to be using it extensively in their forthcoming missions. All right. The Long March, the name should give you the hint, is to do with the Chinese Space Agency, okay. Roscosmos again is the Russian one. The Russians use Soyuz. You must know this by now. The Russians use Soyuz. So again, this is incorrect too. This is incorrect too. And Space Launch System is the one that is used by NASA. It is equivalent to, you can say in rough terms, to our LVM, which was used in Chandrayaan 3. Okay. So the incorrect ones that are here are 2, 3 and 4. Yes, fair enough? Fair enough? All right. Finally, the last question we discussed was section 144, and the differences when it came to say between the dual model of district administration versus the singular pattern. Okay. Please understand again, the commissionerate system is considered to be a part of the police reforms. It is supposed to be a positive step. Okay. So in a commissionerate system, section 144 can be imposed by a police officer, absolutely correct. And commissionerate system does not encompass, in fact, the dual model. In the dual model, you have the DC plus the SP. Okay. Whereas in a commissionerate system, you do have these two particular agencies, you know, both the individuals do exist. However, this person has a lot of the power of the DC. In fact, the judicial powers are given to the police commissioner or a representative of the police commissioner. Okay. So the incorrect statements here being 2 only. All right. So that completes our yesterday's questions. These are my star individuals: Shubham, Tanu, Kevin, Mandeep, Mahalakshmi, Evergreen, Pranjul, Pooja, Karuna, and Lekam. Excellent, guys. Firstly, I see some regular names here, and that's very heartening for me. Good. Keep it up. To the rest, those who are watching this, again, those who are watching this live, I know many of you choose not to comment or go ahead. That's fine. But again, look to answer the questions, or at least answer it in your own realm, if that is what say benefits you. But make sure that you attend the questions. Okay, it'll help you out eventually and immensely. Okay, and let's go forward then. Okay, let's look at the first topic now. So the Sustainable Development Goals. Okay, 2015. Firstly, understand 2015 was a landmark year. Okay, a landmark year in terms of say the frameworks and agreements that were formed. So a mains question comes out of that only. In fact, I will discuss that also. So in 2015, one of the primary agreements that came forward was this collective agenda for global peace, for prosperity, for a good future together. Okay, and that was called as Agenda 2030, the set of 17 goals that came forward. Okay, 2015 mein ye aaya, and then from 2016 it was enforced. All right, the target time was up until 2030. You have to look to achieve all this, which is why it was called Agenda 2030. All right. Now, when you look at all of these goals together, and we'll take a look at each of them individually, one thing that you need to realize is that the realization of a majority of them, in fact, in this class, you will see that the realization of all of them is codependent on taking the climate change factor in, say, policy making or policy perspective. Okay, that unless you are, say, including climate change in its various forms that we will discuss today as a part of the central project, say how you are looking to address zero hunger, for example. Now, can you address, say, poverty and malnutrition without, say, factoring in climate change? How are you going to, say, develop resistant varieties that are particularly useful for vulnerable areas unless and until you haven't factored in climate change? Okay. So the mains question for today originates out of this discussion, guys. So what I want you to do is focus on the next 20 minutes. Thereafter, attend the mains question for me. Okay? Okay. Meteorites are space debris. We'll take a look. I'll check it once again, Deepak. Fine. Good morning, Pratik, Pranjul. Okay, I'll check karta hu, but let me check it once. All right. Now let's look at 2015 first. 2015 was a landmark year, like I told you. A mains question comes out of this. So look at the agreements that are gone ahead and signed that year. First, you have the Sendai framework. We have read about it, say, in terms of disaster management. You're also looking at the action agenda for financing, for climate financing, the Addis Ababa agenda. Okay. So you look at this. You're looking at disaster. You're looking at climate financing. You're looking at, again, the SDGs. And then you're looking at the Paris climate framework. So can you understand? 4 different frameworks signed within a year. A mains question comes out of this. That 2015 was a landmark year. Just the first statement itself was a landmark year for multilateralism and international policy shaping. Comment. So these 4 firstly are going to be your answers there. Now in 2015, one of it that we are going to discuss today is the 2030 agenda. Now let's look at the monitoring first. Who is responsible for the monitoring? So every year, the United Nations Secretary General, the present Secretary General is Antonio Guterres. So he takes out the SDG progress report. He is responsible for this. This comes out once every year, annually. And then you have this, which has been asked, by the way. Okay, the Global Sustainable Development Report, again by the United Nations. All right, and this comes out once every 4 years. So make a note of these two. Okay. So you must know the progress. Who does the monitoring? These two are the primary, say, benchmarks. One is annual, one is quadrennial. Now, look at the whole point of the class today. The 17 SDGs are not always in consonance with each other. A primary criticism of the SDGs, by the way. Okay. So you're looking at ecosystem-based SDGs versus equity-based SDGs. Now let's go back. Which are the ecosystem ones? Can you just like spot them for me very quickly? Which ones are the ones that are talking about, say, ecosystem and conservation and all of that? 1, life below water, SDG 14. Okay. SDG 15, life on land. Again, talking about environment, conservation. Number 13, climate action, talking about ecosystem. Right? Which ones are the ones that are talking about equity now? Number 10, reduced inequalities. Okay? Quality education. See how they are categorized. On one side, you are talking about, say, redistribute or distributive justice. And on the other side, you are talking about, say, ecosystem or conservation or management of, say, resources. Now, how are these two contradictory in certain instances is what we need to understand for the question that I have for you. All right. So, let's go forward. Have a look at it now. For example, now, look at this. Conservation efforts by government. Now, in that process, if you go ahead and uproot traditional dwellers from the forest, straight away, quality of life or reduced inequalities, the two that are there as a part of the SDGs. See how they're getting contradictory? Why? Because there are two types of sustainable development goals. On one side, you have the ecosystem ones, the conservation part that you're talking about, but at the same time, there is distributive justice that you're also talking about. Clear? So now let's look at it. How do you reconcile? Because again, you're going to reconcile between the 17 sustainable development goals. So the ecosystem goals, life on land, water, clean energy, equity goals, poverty, inequality, capital, and then efficiency, wherein you talk about the industry also. We'll discuss each SDG now, each of them, and how climate change is a threat or an opportunity or a strength, whatever. Strength to nahi hoga, threat or opportunity. What are the threats or opportunities for each SDG? Okay, that'll basically clear the whole concept for you. So look at this. This is obviously our premise today, that climate change hinders the achievement of SDGs. Now look, go through this slide. This is the whole gist that I've given for you for the next slides that is to come. So let's look at the first SDG now. What does SDG 1 tell me? No poverty. Yes, complete elimination of all forms of poverty is what the SDG mentions. Now, climate change diminishes the ecosystem. Yes, you are straight away looking at any form of climate change, straight away affecting the poorest first and the worst, right? So first, your first SDG is compromised. If you don't factor in climate change as a part of your policy, SDG 1 not going to happen. SDG 2 now, zero hunger. Can you link climate change to zero hunger? So obvious. Huh? Like I told you, you need resistant varieties. That research and development needs to be done. Factoring in, say, soil, topsoil. आप लोगों ने पढ़ा ही होगा soil को लेके कितना हल्ला हो रहा है आजकल. If you don't have that perspective in part of your policy, SDG 2 failed again. Climate change can lead to reduced crop yields and increased food insecurity. If food insecurity goes up, straight away you have zero poverty or no poverty. That is also hindered. Okay. SDG 3 now. What is SDG 3? Good health and well-being, that we all should be healthy. However, again, climate change ke chalte you're looking at vector-borne diseases. We have discussed vector-borne diseases in detail, right? Zoonotic diseases, vector-borne diseases. Have we done that, guys? Let me know in the chat if you have seen that lecture, right? So again, increased risk of vector-borne diseases, heat stress, malnutrition. Again, straight away, when these things come in, straight away SDG 1 compromised. Okay. SDG 4. What is SDG 4 talking about? Quality education. Now, if you do not have the basic resources of life, how are you going to have avenues of education? Yes. See again, take the recent example of say the floods that happened, say, in the hills. Okay. Certain areas were washed away. Infrastructure was washed away. Say a school that was present there, now in that flood's gone. Now to rebuild that school in a sarkari procedure, it will take time. So again, access to education for the local kids of that area gone. This is going to increase with more effects of climate change now getting visible. So SDG 4. Okay. Your educational system completely compromised. Here in the cities, schools have to close. Yes. Forget about, say, the vulnerable areas, the threatened areas, the higher reaches of Himalayas. Absolutely impossible. All right. SDG 5 now. What does SDG 5 talk about? Gender equality, in fact. That women actually are, if you look at it, women are the worst impacted when it comes to climate change. You know, the ramifications of climate change are often social. Economic to hai hi, but then there is a very social dimension to it, and you often find that it's the women who have to bear the brunt of it. Imagine those photos only. Forget if you don't want to listen to the whole story. The photos of women having to travel huge distances just to get water. You know, on that matkas they'll carry on the head. They'll go get water from, say, a pond that is 20 kilometers away, 25 kilometers away. Why again? Because, say, the primary responsibility of the household is, well, not entrusted, it's thrust upon the female head of the family. So she is in doing all this chores. Eventually, with climate stress getting more and more real, you are looking at women folk getting disproportionately impacted. Right? So gender equality तो हुआ ही नहीं, starting घर से ही नहीं हुआ, तो बाकी का तो छोड़ ही दो आप. ठीक है? SDG 6, clean water and sanitation, does not take you long to figure out. That clean water and sanitation will be the first threat. You know, you're looking at river waters drying up, more siltation, or if you stop siltation, what has happened in the Himalayas, guys? If you have been reading about the Sundarbans, see, look at how small things affect everywhere. So in the Sundarbans, what has happened is, because in the higher reaches of the Himalayas, you have started building dams. You have started building barrages. Eventually what happens? It's affecting the river flow, the natural flow of the river, the silt movement of the river. It has come to such a stage now where marine water ingress is happening in the river channel near Sundarbans. So when you have marine water ingressing deep into the river channel upstream, you have, say, local fishes or local communities that survive on fishing. Suddenly they find the fishes are gone. Okay. Water table is affected. The nearby, because again you have ingress of marine water happening because of upstream activities. Do you realize? So clean water sanitation, the first victim of climate change. Alright. So SDG 6, you are looking at water getting affected. SDG 7, okay. Now SDG 7 is what? Affordable and clean energy, which is talking about renewable energy, right? That you go ahead and invest in renewable energy. But then again, that is a capital intensive process that we have realized so far. And so in a capital intensive process, that capital is allocated at the times, most of the times, after, say, proportionately cutting from, say, other social sector initiatives. So that also needs to be factored in. Okay. Just blindly shifting to renewable energy without having, say, the adequate support that is required for the other social sector initiatives would not be a prudent strategy, because again then you go ahead and strike at SDG 1, eliminating all sorts of poverty. So what's the key word here? That any sort of action needs to be equitable and inclusive. Okay. That if you start thinking in isolation, which is why I say mains also, I think, tests this skill. You know, in a major part of policies making is to be very equitable and inclusive in the ramifications or the consequences of the policy that you create. Do you understand that? Which is what should be the focus here. Alright. SDG 8, decent work and economic growth, kahan se hoga? Reduced human productivity, disrupting supply chains, already happening. And say these are just the natural factors that you're talking about. Just think of 2023 itself. The Russia-Ukraine crisis. You have the US-China decoupling going on. So do you realize the last SDG, SDG 17 in fact, okay, it talks about international cooperation. Can you realize now the criticism of SDGs? That most of it is very theoretical. It's not practical. It's far too broad and not very specific. Do you realize? So if you're given a question on SDGs in the mains, one very good criticism of it is that the SDG principles are very wide. And so results depend on specificity. The more specific you are in desiring your outcomes, the better your, say, particular motivation and approach will be. Which is why, say, big companies have something like key result areas. They don't have broad result areas that, okay, broadly you should go ahead and achieve this. That does not happen. So SDG again fails there. Clear? SDG 9. Okay, industry, innovation and infrastructure, not going to happen. How is it? You are going to have carbon emissions. Eventually it's going to affect the clean energy SDG. Okay. Look at the others, 10, 11, 12, 14 and 15. More importantly, look at this now. I want you to go ahead and look at this, SDG 16, guys. Peace, justice and strong institutions. We have done an entire class on climate justice. Remember? So until and unless you have a climate financing mechanism, which is again equitable and inclusive, okay, in fact fair, equitable and inclusive, only then can you claim to have achieved SDG 16. Okay. Now the climate financing, the whole multilateral development banks, when we had done it in detail, we'll revise it one of these days. You realize, you in fact remember by now, that a lot has to do with, say, allocation of money that should have come by now, but has not. On, say, varied grounds, problem of attribution is there. Okay. That a climate event, how can you attribute it that the West caused it? So many of those arguments are there. But until and unless a fair, inclusive and equitable mechanism is worked out to address the concerns of the global South, okay, unless that happens, again SDG 16 not going to happen, right? SDG 17, partnership for the goals. I told you the 2023 only, that the world itself is being pulled apart in different directions by different agencies and companies and organizations and countries, okay. And 2030 is 7 years down the line. Are you hopeful of any of these SDGs getting met? So what are the United Nations looking at? In September this year, there is an SDG summit, okay, where they are going to address these very problems that I just told you. Okay, where does the United Nations session happen, guys? The venue must be known to all. I don't think the venue needs discussion. United Nations, most of it happens here in New York. Okay, and then next year, this is in September 2023, and then in next year 2024, you are looking at Summit of the Future. Okay, same thing, again in New York. This is where they are going to completely review the progress made so far, and whether 2030 will they be able to achieve any of this, or will it remain again like the Millennium Development Goals, you know, another chapter for the UPSC aspirants to study. Will it have some practical applications at all? Okay. So this is what the whole topic was. The question that I have for you now, focus on the question. So let me just give you the question first. Then you can go ahead and write this. This is the question for the day. The full realization of Agenda 2030 needs to compulsorily include Alright, send me the answers to this. I want you to write no more than 200 words on this, please. Okay, don't write like a huge answer. Keep it succinct, keep it short. Okay, look to address individual SDGs. Okay, now this is one answer where you can bring in the bullet point format for your answers. So you have say 17 SDGs that are there. Okay, I have given you the information that is there. Go ahead, write about individual SDGs and how climate change affects them, say in no more than 3 to 4 lines. Alright, start with an introduction saying what are the convergences, what are the problem areas when it comes to climate change and climate action, and leave with a conclusion that 2030, say the future summit next year, Summit of the Future, and the SDG summit in 2023 needs to address these issues if Agenda 2030 is to be realized in totality. If you do that, that's a good answer. Okay, compulsorily leave a conclusion for this, guys. समझ में आ रहा है आप लोगों को? Clear है? Okay. So go ahead, have a look at this. I have given you the basics of it, and you can include this particular diagram. This is called sustainomics. Okay, sustainomics. ये लिखो इसको. So if you want a good figure for your answer, this is what you are going to include. That the 3 triumvirates that we discussed today, you know, one, the economic angle, the economic SDGs, then you are looking at the social SDGs, and then you are looking at the environmental SDGs. And that all of them need to be eventually linked. You know, that reconciliation of SDGs that we spoke about. That is essentially it. So include this figure. Talk about the social dimension, you know, look at it. That your social SDGs and environmental SDGs have a cultural connotation. Some practices may be considered to be unsustainable. Where do you draw the line again? Do you say completely outlaw any unsustainable practice? You know, Then what happens to traditional heritage, traditional knowledge? All those factors also need to be answered. So have a look at this figure. Include this figure also if you want to say further showcase your understanding to the evaluator. Okay, I would recommend this. Okay, all right. Let's look at the questions, guys, from the prelims perspective. Now I have say questions A to again F or G or some number. Answer them like in a tabular format like you have been doing. That helps me look at individual answers. Okay. So the SDG Summit, New York, Summit of the Future, Copenhagen, COP28, Dubai. You will identify the incorrectly matched. Basic we will do. Alright. Which of the following are sustainable practices? Now go ahead. This will require a bit of thinking on your part. Is say slash and burn a sustainable practice? Jumming. I don't know what's the pronunciation. Okay. Cobalt mining. Is it a sustainable practice? Alright. Deep sea trawling, we have discussed this say in the class on India-Sri Lanka relations. Is it a sustainable practice? Commercial mountaineering, again, what could go wrong with mountaineering? But again, is it sustainable, unsustainable? And construction of dams, barrages and reservoirs. Again, are they sustainable? Or is there a sustainable alternative to it? When you're answering them individually, go ahead and first consider what could be the alternative to each of them. And then evaluate whether it is sustainable or not. Okay, you will compare it to something else, no, and then realize कि कौन sustainable है कौन नहीं है. Okay, so that should be the way you should go ahead and answer this question. And which of the following is not a part of the sustainable development goals? So I have given you the whole overview of the SDGs. You will tell me whether intergenerational equity, intragenerational equity, collective responsibility are a part of the SDGs or not, or whether none of the above is the correct answer here. Okay, it will require a bit of thinking, but trust me, UPSC questions ask you to think on the spot. Alright, so spend some 5-6 minutes, have a look at the 17 SDGs and you shall arrive at the answer. I have no doubt about that. Okay, alright. Okay, so that completes the first one, the major topic I had for you. Now lecture 2 of the Aranya series goes live this evening. Okay, we have completed the first class, the introduction class, where I gave a macro overview of what I am looking to achieve through this whole series. We begin with the first class today. We will take a look at ecosystem. We will take a look at the basic concepts first. Okay, the first has to be the basics. And then we are looking at close to around 7 to 10 MCQs originating out of the whole concept. So it's going to be a class of around 40-45 minutes. Make sure that you join me at 9 p.m. This series runs 3 days a week now. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and we are looking to cover the entire syllabus of environment and ecology and forest and climate change, all that is required for the civil services examination or for that matter any state service examination. Once you have prepared for the UPSC syllabus, everything else is more or less covered. Okay, so we'll take a look at that. Lecture 2 goes live this evening, 9 p.m. Okay, please do be there. I'd really appreciate it. Okay, all right, now let's look at cherries. So cherries again, very famous. Probably it's famous because of that quote, no, cherry on top of the cake. So where are cherries grown in India? So what you find is the particular weather condition that it requires. Okay, the particular weather condition that it requires is very specific. In the winters, it requires the winters to be harsh. Why? Because it needs to break dormancy. Its seeds enter a dormant state. Okay, so a harsh winter allows it to finally break dormancy, and in the autumn it flowers. Right? So you need harsh winters. First things first, a sort of temperate climate is needed. Mild summers are beneficial. Okay, and you require targeted water. Plus the soil that it has the requirement of is loamy. Okay, it requires loamy soil and targeted water. So your drip irrigation is normally the recommended way for cherries. Okay, I will provide the the PDF of the book. I may not be available. I'll have to check though. But what I will do is I'll provide the entire PPT on my Telegram channel. In fact, the PPT, the PDF of that, and that will include everything that is there for the chapter. Okay, you will not miss out on anything. That I can assure you. Okay. Alright, so where are they finally grown? J&K, Himachal and Uttarakhand, again because they satisfy this criteria. You also find in isolated areas in Punjab and Haryana also. Okay, but then they cannot be considered to be commercial in nature per se. Okay, so the commercial nature of cherry growing only in 3 states of India. All right. Now cherries thrive in temperate climate, cold winters, mild summers. In fact, cold is an understatement. It requires harsh winters. Okay. So they require a period of winter chilling. Look at this, a cold treatment. You know, a short intensive time span, intense cold. Why is that needed? Eventually for it to germinate. Only then it breaks that dormant state that it has gone into. Okay. So to break the dormant state and then initiate flowering in spring. Clear? So now cherry trees prefer well-drained loamy soils. You know the pH. Drip irrigation is required and pruning is required. What is pruning? You go ahead and cut it from both sides. You know, give it a haircut once in a while. So you need to prune the particular sapling that is growing. Okay. Now what are the methods in which you go ahead and grow cherries? We will learn about say 4 methods today, and these are methods of botany that you need to be aware of as civil service aspirants, again coming from the NCERT, which many of you may have say ignored till now. Okay, so we'll take a look at the 4 methods first. Let's look at number 1, grafting. Take 10 minutes and you will not forget this ever. What is grafting? A scion, a young shoot. Forget the botany. What does a scion mean? That's a, what's the son's name? I forget. Junior Ambani is the scion of Reliance. Okay. What does that mean? That he is the next CEO or the next owner of Reliance. Scion is supposed to be a young prodigy type person. Same thing in botany here. You have an old particular stem. You go ahead, bring a young stem, put them both together. Okay, that is grafting. All right. So a scion is grafted onto a rootstock of a compatible cherry tree. This is in fact old. This is young. You go ahead and tie them together. That is grafting. Then what is budding? This is again a form of asexual reproduction. Okay. Understand it and you won't forget it. What is budding? As the name suggests, bud is what? A small outgrowth. So you have the old, say the old cherry sample. It has a small bud that grows out of it. Okay. Eventually it grows a little bit ahead in size. You take it out, plant it separately. Budding. Alright. What is cutting? You go ahead and cut out the particular parts of it and use it for the next plant. Names will indicate what the usages are. And layering is what? You have a big sample, the branch of it, you take it into the soil and put it there. Eventually, you finally get the next outgrowth from the buried branch. We'll take a look at each of them individually now so that you will never forget this. Look at this grafting. You have the young one here, the old one here. You go ahead and marry them together. Okay. Once you have married this, the next one that has come out has the genetic property of both of them, which means much more stronger. Alright. Then you are looking at this is budding. Here, look at this. This particular bud, this outgrowth. Eventually, you go ahead and separate it. You get 2 particular varieties. Form of asexual reproduction, by the way. Okay, make sure that you know this. Okay. And this is again what? The cutting incident, that you go ahead, cut it in half. Immediate exact opposite of the grafting. आपने आधे से काटा, ऊपर वाले को अलग प्लांट किया, नीचे वाला अपने आप regenerate करेगा. Clear? And then this is layering, which I told you. You go ahead and bury a branch. Look at this. The branch here is buried under the soil, eventually giving rise to the next shoot. Clear? So these are the 4 methods of cherry growing. You now know about grafting, layering, budding and what was the cutting. Clear? Now what your homework is, go ahead and learn about 2 such specimens of each. Okay? 2 such specimens that are say used or grafted. Say rose. Do you graft it or cut it or layer it? What happens? How do you grow rose? Just go ahead and learn 2 species each or 2 samples of each. That's all you need to do. Okay. Do this. It will take you no more than 5 to 10 minutes. Your job is done. Alright. Now what's the recent development here regarding cherries, in fact? Coming back to the discussion on cherries, the recent development is that India had a fumigation protocol. So what does that mean? So if you are in the United States and if you wanted to send a northwest cherries, okay, the United States of America, they in fact lobbied for a long time to send us their northwest cherries, okay, and in fact in 2022 or 23 only, January, a small change was introduced. So now you will see a lot of American cherries in India. What was the change? So the Indian government had a provision that it was called as the fumigation protocol, wherein before you send the container of cherries to India, you had to go ahead and fumigate the whole container. Okay. So what would happen? That it would affect the temperature of the container or the box. Okay. And cherries, you know, will survive, say, only in cold temperature. Even the product survives in cold temperature, which is why you keep them in your refrigerator. Okay. So this fumigation would increase the temperature of the box or the particular container. The cherries would go bad. By the time they reached India, no one would buy them. Indian cherries had the whole market. So the Americans did not like it. So they lobbied with the Indian government. This fumigation protocol has now been removed, outdated. Now a new system-based protocol has been brought in. Okay, a system-based protocol has come in. All right, but then you need to know what was the fumigation protocol that has been removed. All right, and so you're looking at more of such cherries now entering the Indian market. All right, and at the same time this year you have had a massive, say, extended rainfall happening in Jammu Kashmir, in Himachal. आप लोगों ने तो देखा ये news. You all are intelligent individuals. You have been following the news. So this has affected the Indian cherry that you and I normally consume. So now what is expected is that the US cherry will make further inroads into the Indian market. Basically that our people, their livelihood is going to be compromised. So the way ahead is that Indian government goes ahead and addresses these issues by giving them, say, insurance or particular alternate means of livelihood or whatever. Okay. So the cherries market is again important for you to understand, which we have discussed today. Go ahead and answer me these questions, please. Cherry in India is primarily grown in Himachal, J&K, in Uttarakhand. Statement 2, Shillong is famous for cherry blossoms. Okay. Now please understand, today we discussed cherries, and in the photos, the Instagram photos that you see, it talks about the cherry blossoms. Sorry. Okay. So what's the difference, guys? There are two different things, by the way. They are not the same. This is a fruit. Okay. This is a tree with brilliant flowers and good scent, in fact. Excellent aroma. Okay. So don't get confused. I'm giving you the answer. Cherry and cherry blossoms are not the same. In India, you find cherry blossoms in Sikkim. Okay. In Shillong, primarily. Okay. Japan is famous for its cherry blossoms, by the way. I hope you are aware of that. Alright. So you'll answer this question for me. Next, which of the above would be suitable for growing cherries? What would be the climatic conditions that would be required? Okay. Go ahead and answer this for me too. And okay. So that's your second topic done, guys. Cherries. I hope you'll be able to answer those questions. Okay. Make sure that you go ahead and look at the areas of distribution also. Okay. Jammu Kashmir, it is near Badgam district. In Himachal, you have the higher reaches, Chamba ke side. Okay. Uttarakhand, again, Dehradun. Alright. So look at the districts also if you get time. Just have a look at the maps. Not a lot. Fine. So the next, the August batch, in fact. Okay. The August batch, the prelims to interview initiative, beginning on the 11th. Alright. And this would be again your evening batch, I believe. Yes? Oh, it's a morning batch. Good for you. Good for you. It's good for me actually. I enjoy teaching in the mornings. Evening gets a little tiring. But anyways, so this morning batch is starting off on the 11th. And so make sure that you join me, okay? We have started already 3 batches. All seats are full. In fact, the schedule is as packed as it can be. Alright. However, because again, the students do keep, the applications keep coming, the inquiries keep coming. So the 11th is when the next batch is going to start. Okay. The whole course objective plus say the subject wise distribution. कौन सा subject पहले जाएगा, कौन सा आखिरी जाएगा. have a look at it on the StudyIQ website. All right. And when you go ahead and sign up for this, please understand that you also get the CSAT part free, by the way. Okay. The CSAT part is included in this. So therein I am taking care of your reading comprehension. All right. If you have not seen my reading comprehension classes, again, they are available under the playlist in StudyIQ IAS English. Have a look at them. Have a look at how we approach reading comprehensions and some of the feedback of the students that have been received vis-a-vis this year. How that helped them, say, cross the CSAT paper, which many people found very difficult, by the way. Okay. So it will be of benefit to you, and use the code BALIVE as I always ask you to do, and we shall see you on the 11th. All right, Voyager 2. Some problem it has faced, okay, unable to receive any instructions. So the NASA fellows are all little worried. So it was a space probe. What is a probe? What is a space probe? It is essentially looking to go ahead and just observe. A probe is probing, observing, inquiring. This was a space probe with the mission objective being very clear. The mission objective was that it was going to study Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus and Neptune. Only these 4 planets. All right. Now, why am I telling you this? Because the question will give you options like this. Search for extraterrestrial life on Mars. Search for ice on Venus. Some nonsense, it will give you options. The whole point of this was, look at the 4 satellites, 4 planets, the big ones. Okay. Observe them closely and look at, say, like map it out. What is the whole point of it? What do you find is 2 major things that came forward after this. Number 1, in Jupiter, okay, the biggest planet that we know of, and in Neptune. Okay. In the Jupiter, it found the great red spot. Okay. If you have seen photos of the Jupiter, you will see that near its polar areas, it is quite red in fact, reddish in color. Okay. So the Voyager found the great red spot on Jupiter, and on Neptune, it went ahead and found the great dark spot or black spot. Okay. A bluish sort of area. All right. It also went ahead and looked at the moons of Jupiter very closely. All right. So we'll understand all of that. Now, it is the only spacecraft to have visited all 4 of the solar system's giant outer planets. If one of these options tell you that the scope of the Voyager mission was to study the inner planets, okay, the outer planets, the Jovian planets, make sure that you can identify the differences between each of them. Okay. What are the inner planets, the outer planets, the Jovian planets? Okay. NCERT level, guys. See, this is where NCERT becomes very useful. You cannot read newspapers without knowing the background from NCERT. Okay. All right. So let's look at the questions, guys. Which of the following planets has the great red spot? And in fact, also tell me about the great black spot or dark spot. Okay. You will answer this also for me. Okay. Next. Io, Ganymede, Europa and Callisto are the moons of Jupiter. True or not? Do you guys know the moons of each and every, see, obviously it's important to, it's impossible to know all the moons, but the major moons at least. Make a note of them. So the Jupiter probably, I'll tell you in tomorrow's class, but answer this question. What are the names of Jupiter's major moons? Okay. Jupiter in fact has close to 100 moons. So that is not all, obviously it's not important. The major ones you should know. The moons of Jupiter create a complex satellite system called the Jovian system. True or false? You shall let me know. And Saturn has the highest number of moons. Again, true or false? You shall let me know. Okay. Now, if you go ahead and try and Google about it, in 2021 you will find that Jupiter is mentioned. Then 2022 you will find Saturn is mentioned. What happens is that as researchers go and researching more about these planets, so the more number of moons are identified. So at present, the International Union's numbers is what we will consider. Okay. So go ahead and have a brief look, because again these are kind of questions that are basic. And so in the examination, guys, I'll tell you, like, because I have 2 minutes, so I can tell you. In the examination, there are 2 types of questions. Okay. One are the low hanging fruits. And then you have the differential questions. Every time UPSC follows this model. Okay. Have a look at any paper and you will understand and learn to spot these questions. So the low hanging fruits are the questions that come out of NCRTs or come out of textbooks or come out of modern history. Impossible to get it incorrect. Okay. The differential questions are the ones that will say be asked from ancient or some obscure part of medieval. Okay. That is, if you get those correct, along with say the LHF, the low hanging fruits, you give your chances of clearing prelims a massive boost. Most students, those who fail to clear prelims, are the ones who mess up these questions. The low hanging fruits, the questions that come out of NCRTs, known books, Lakshmikant, or whichever book you are going through, right? That static, in fact, is often, most likely the determinant of your prelims success. Obviously, current affairs is there to help you along the way. But please understand, like I had mentioned in the first class itself of this whole series, that if you are looking at, say, the brick by brick of your success, every brick is the static bit. The current affairs is only the glue that joins the static. So make sure that you guys are focusing on your static, okay? As an aspirant, it is very easy to go ahead and inordinately focus on current affairs. But make sure that, say, the whole questions are designed in a way that it tests your static knowledge also, because without that, current affairs is meaningless. Okay? So go ahead and answer the questions. If you face any difficulties, reach out to me on my email ID. Okay? There are some, again, mains answers I have not been able to respond to because I was a bit unwell, but I'll try and respond to them today. Okay? And this is on my Telegram ID. Go ahead and scan this, be a part of my Telegram channel. I share all the PDFs there. And as Deepak has also requested, I will be sharing the PDFs of the Aranya series there also. Okay. So they will include all the major content that you need to understand from the environment perspective. So go ahead and please join the Telegram channel. And if you face any particular doubts per se, okay, any particular strategy, guidance, or if there is anything that is bugging you preparation wise, well, I'm available on Instagram. Okay. I haven't made my first post yet because again, we'll get to it there eventually. I want to focus right now on making sure that your needs for the Aranya series and for the editorial edge are taken care of. However, if you have any particular question, any particular doubt, or any suggestion, feedback, bouquets, brickbats, please reach out to me on my Instagram handle also. Okay. You scan this, it will take you right there. And if there is your answers, by the way, should arrive here. The mains answer that I have given you, send it to me on bhuvan.jha@studyiq.com, please. Okay. I normally try and respond, say, in another like 1 to 2 days. The last set I have been unable to respond to because of, say, varied reasons, which I will get back to by today. Okay. And so that's it for today. We have discussed 3 topics: the SDGs, the climate change, how it relates to SDGs. We have discussed, and thanks, by the way, for that meteorite point. I'll check it and I'll confirm it to you tomorrow. Okay. Then we discussed extensively about the Voyager mission. And what was the third topic for the day? What was the third topic? I forget. But anyways, that was our whole agenda. Okay. Yeah, cherries. Again, important. Cherries is a crop that most of you will be ignoring. So, thoda horticulture pe bhi dhyan dena chahiye from time to time. Okay. All right. That completes the class. Please join me 9 p.m. For the second class of Aranya series. We'll look at the basic concepts. I have around 10 questions for you that will test your understanding of the environment part. Okay. See you at 9 p.m. and also tomorrow morning 8 a.m. For tomorrow's edition of the Editorial Edge. Have a wonderful day, a productive day.